everybody, this is Noble, and today we're going to be doing an updated version of the Valkyrie deck profile. So I haven't gone over Valkyrie since like the birth of this channel, so it's been quite a while, definitely overdue. Valkyries are a budget deck that can OTK your opponent extremely quickly. In fact, there's a really unique card, one of the top 10 most unique cards in Yu-Gi-Oh! That's built specifically for this deck that just allows you to OTK kind of unlike any other deck. And like I said, this is budget. A lot of cards did get reprinted. So like the most expensive card now is like maybe like $4 or something like that. So it's really not bad at all. You can OTK really quickly, and when you win with Valkyries, a lot of people aren't expecting it. If you don't know what that unique card does, we'll get to that in a little bit, but it is really, really cool to just really overwhelm your opponent with a bunch of chicks on horses or unicorns or whatever the heck they are. So without further ado, guys, let's get right on into this deck profile. So to start us off, we're playing double Valkyrie Sigrun. Now Sigrun, or Sigrun, however you say it, this is the newest Valkyrie that was given to us this past year. Good Lord, 2021. But what this one does is a level 9. It's really easy to get out into the field. If this card is in your hand, you can target one face-up spell or trap card you control and send it to the graveyard. And if you do special summon this card, if this card is normal or special summoned, you special summon a 1 level 8 or lower Valkyrie monster from your hand or graveyard. You'll use each effect of Valkyrie Sigrun once per turn. So really simple effect, but it's really awesome. It's easy to get out into the field, and because it's a level 9, you can even run True King in this deck, which, you know, like I always say, if you hate that card, don't worry about it, but it is possible. That's why I played 2 of this, because I've actually been able to get it out on this deck. So, you know, being able to get out TFD with a Valkyrie deck is pretty cool. But yeah, level 9, it's easy to get out into the field, and also when it's normal or special summon, so literally either one. You can special summon any level 8 or lower Valkyrie monster from your hand or graveyard. So you have another spot to be able to pull out a special summon. And then a lot of the Valkyries, when they're special summoned, they have other effects that go off as well. So this is a really cool card. It can make you, allow you to go into a really awesome extra deck monster or terrible extra deck monster, depending on what your view is on that. And then just gives you another body, and then more attacks, more effects fire off, and then you can potentially go into an OTK as well. So yeah, I think double Sigrun is definitely, I'm saying different every time, I don't know how to say it. Sigrun is definitely the way to go. I'm also playing double Valkyrie Air Day. Now Air Day is really interesting. A lot of people run this at 1, and I run it at 2, and I'll explain why. So what this card does is it has a decent body at 2000 attack and a decent defense at 2200, but the really cool thing about it is its effects are so good you can only control 1 Valkyrie Air Day. So when it's special summoned by the effect of a Valkyrie card, which more than likely it will, all cards, all face-up monsters your opponent controls lose 1000 attack, just because. It's kind of like Raid Raptor Ultimate Falcon. They just lose 1000 attack just because. So that right there sucks, but the secondary effect really sucks for your opponent, where any card destroyed by battle or card effect that would be sent to your opponent's graveyard is banished instead. And in this day and age of Yu-Gi-Oh!, graveyards are really a second hand or a second place for additional resources. So it kind of has like a Dark Law effect. On top of your opponent losing attack power, their stuff is going to go to the banish pile instead of going to the graveyard, which is going to be really problematic, especially if you're playing something against like Sky Striker or something like that. They're going to want to try and get rid of this. So the reason I play 2 is because basically as soon as your opponent figures out that graveyard effect, unless you're playing Thunder Dragon, they're going to want to get rid of this card quickly. And a lot of times I've been very happy that I ran a second copy, because a lot of times I've burned through both copies just in, you know, one duel. So if you want to just bump this down to 1, that's fine. You can probably get away with that. But me personally, I really like 2. I think 2 works out really well. Next up, I'm playing triple Valkyrie Brunhilde. Every time I do a Valkyrie deck profile, I get roasted because of the way I say the names, which if you've been watching my stuff, that shouldn't surprise you at this point anyway. But so Valkyrie Brunhilde is probably my favorite. She's unaffected by your opponent's spell effect, so she has a weird little quirky protection, I guess. She gains 500 attack for each monster your opponent controls, so she can get big pretty quickly. When an opponent's monster declares an attack, you can have this card lose exactly 1000 defense, and if you do that, your Valkyrie monsters cannot be destroyed by battle this turn. So it is cool because she does have 2000 defense, so you can do that twice. And it gives protection as well, and she's like, she has a little bit of protection, and she can get big really quickly, and you know, you can use her to OTK. So if you actually want to run 2 of this one, you can probably get away with that, but most of the time I actually end up using up to 3 in a duel, especially if it's getting a little bit grindier. Okay, here's the one that people got mad at me for. I'm running 3 Valkyrie Seshte. I know how you're actually supposed to say it. I just don't like the way that sounds. I don't really want to say that on my channel. So I'm going to say Seshte. So this one's really cool. It allows you to get monsters out in the field. So what this one does is if this card is special summon, you can special summon 1 Valkyrie monster from your deck, except another copy of this card. And special summoning from the deck is one of the most powerful effects in Yu-Gi-Oh! This little baby level 1 Valkyrie monster, this little pony unicorn, is able to get out the big boss monsters of the deck and go to OTKs or, you know, extra deck plays from there. And then you can mill the top 2 cards of your opponent's deck to the graveyard during your main phase. And then you can only use each effect per turn. So yeah, like I said, a lot of times when you have like Photon Leaf, you run that in this deck, if you have this card in your hand, you're going to want to use this because you get this on the field and you special summon literally any Valkyrie you need straight from your deck, and then more than likely that Valkyrie's effect will go off and then go on from there. So this is a really good card. I do definitely recommend you run this at 3, and I think I got an Ultra reprint, I believe, in the Mega 10, so that was really good because that one was getting a little bit pricey. Next up, running triple Valkyrie Drete. I can already feel the dislikes coming. If this card is normal or special summon, you can add a Valkyrie card from your deck to your hand, except another copy of this card. So this is kind of the built-in searcher of the deck. If it's normal or special summon, literally either one, you get to add any Valkyrie card from your deck to your hand, and that really helps the consistency of this deck because it doesn't just have to be a monster, it can be a spell as well. And you only use the effect once per turn, and it gains 200 attack for each of your opponent's banished monsters. So if you combo this with Air Day, I mean, it can get kind of big, I guess, but you're not really banking on that. You're really using this for the search ability. Next up, running double Valkyrie Zoete. If this card is summoned, you can target a monster your opponent controls and you can pop it. And then after damage calculation, if this card battled, you can target 1 continuous spell in your graveyard and add it to your hand. You lose each effect once per turn. I don't really run a ton of the continuous spells in this deck. I just kind of think that you could use those spots for better cards, in my opinion. I think I only run 1, but if you're running more of the built-in continuous spells, this would be really good, but because I don't, I only run it 2. Running double Valkyrie Airstay, what this one does is if this card is special summoned from your hand by spell effect, which happens more than you would think, you can target emissions of the Time Goddess in your graveyard and add it back to your hand. If you control a Valkyrie monster other than this card, quick effect, you can banish a monster in your opponent's graveyard, then this card's attack becomes equal to the banished monster's original attack until the end of this turn. So that is kind of cool, and the fact that it's a quick effect is really helpful. You just banish something and this thing can get big, and a lot of times your opponent's not going to remember that this card can do that, so you can kind of catch them off guard with that. Running 1 Valkyrie Verte, I say this all the time, I ran this at 2, and I literally drew this in my opening hand like 20 duels in a row. So I finally cut it down to 1. And not that you don't want to see this in your opening hand necessarily, it was just getting too much. So I don't know what it was about this card, but I was seeing it way too much. I had to cut it down to 1. But what this one does is during your main phase, you can excavate the top cards of your deck equal to the number of other Valkyrie monsters you control. And if you do, add an excavated normal spell and trap card to your hand, and then send the remaining cards to the graveyard. Otherwise, shuffle all excavated cards onto the deck. When this card is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon a Valkyrie monster from your deck. And that is really cool, but you really don't get to use that secondary effect as much as you would think, because your opponent's probably going to realize that you can get special summon, a free special summon from the deck when this card is destroyed by battle, so they're going to try and get rid of it other ways. But if you do happen to get it popped by battle, that's really nice. You get a free special summon from the deck, and it's going to be any Valkyrie monster. I'm running 1 Funtfei. Valkyrie monsters you control gain 200 attack for each of your opponent's banished monsters. And if you control a Valkyrie monster other than this card, you can special summon, you can send a spell and trap card from your deck to the graveyard. You only use this effect once per turn. This is really good if you wanted to bump this one up to 2. You could do that because you can just basically foolish burial goods right of the Valkyries straight into the graveyard, and then you banish that to get Miss of the Time Goddess if you need to do that. Also running double Arclor Christia. This is a really, really good card in this deck. It can really lock out your opponent from special summoning and be the cherry on top. If you have exactly 4 fairy monsters in your graveyard, you can special summon this card from your hand, which is easy to achieve in this deck. And when you do, you target a fairy monster in your graveyard and add that target to your hand. Neither player can special summon monsters. Straight up. Neither player can special summon monsters. So do make sure before you bring this out that your board has been established. There's been a few times where just not paying attention, I bring this out before I go into my plays. And then, hey, guess what? I'm screwed. I mean, it's nice because you have a 2800 beat streak on the field, and if your opponent can't special summon more than likely, they're not going to be able to get past this anyway. But yeah, just keep that in mind. And then if this face-up card would be sent from the field to graveyard, it returns to the top of the deck instead. Also running triple Honest in this deck because everything is light, and this is fantastic card. You're doing a lot of battling with this deck, and Honest is just freaking great. Like, it's just an amazing card. And then running also triple Ash. If you wanted to bump down the Ash and play something else, that's fine, but that's the only hand trap I'm playing because I'm also running Honest in this deck. So that's actually it for the monsters, guys. Let's move into the spells. Alright, so for the spells, I'm running triple Ride of the Valkyries. Now this card is phenomenal. What it does is you special summon any number of Valkyrie monsters with different names from your hand. Okay, now number one, that alone is crazy. Any number of Valkyrie monsters with different names from your hand, which, you know, a lot of times you're going to try and set up to where you have all the different ones in your hand that you need, like the big boys, and then you can just, you'll see, but a lot of times that's what you'll do. If you special summon 3 or more monsters with this effect, you take no battle damage till the end of the next turn. During the end phase of the turn you activated this card, shuffle all monsters you control into the deck. You can banish this card from your graveyard, add 1 Mischief of the Time Goddess from your deck to your hand. You will use this effect once per turn. Now notice that the stipulation of banishing this card from the graveyard, it doesn't have a stipulation of except the turn this card was sent in the graveyard, which would really slow this deck down, but it doesn't have that. You can literally use Ride of the Valkyries, banish this, get Mischief of the Time Goddess, and Mischief of the Time Goddess will circumvent that entire shuffle all monsters you control into the deck. So what Mischief of the Time Goddess does is that unique card I had mentioned earlier. It's a quick play spell, and neither player can activate cards or effects in response to this card's activation, so it's a spell speed 4 essentially. It cannot be activated as a chain link 2 or higher, so it has to be activated its own volition pretty much. And then at the end of your battle phase, if all monsters you control Valkyrie monsters, minimum 1, which I mean there will be, you send this card to the graveyard. Also, immediately after this effect resolves, you skip to the start of the battle phase of your next turn. If you do, you cannot activate Mischief of the Time Goddess until the end of that turn. So this card, so basically you attack with all your Valkyries, you activate this card, and then this card circumvents this Ride of the Valkyries, a negative effect to where your monsters will be shuffled back into the deck. You get to attack again with all of those big monsters you got on the field, and a lot of times that's game. And the reason I'm running this at 2 is because I've never used 3 Mischief of the Time Goddess in a duel, ever. More than likely, if you use a 1, if you're successfully able to use a 1, that's game. Sometimes I've done 2, but I've never needed a 3rd one, and it's searchable off Ride of the Valkyries as well. So there's a reason I played 2. I would, you could play it at 1 if you wanted to, but if something happens to that 1 copy, this is a huge part of your strategy for the most part. Not really relying on going to the extra deck. So just take that with a grain of salt. But yeah, so 3 Ride of the Valkyries and 2 Vision of the Time Goddess seem to work very well. If you want to play around with the ratios on that, that's totally up to you. But this is a really unique card, and it's really awesome. So moving away from that, I'm playing double Valhalla, Hall of the Fallen. You literally just once per turn. If you control no monsters, you can special summon a fairy type monster from your hand. That's all this one does, and it's a continuous spell as well. Playing triple Photon Lead. Photon Lead is really cool. It's a quick play spell. What it allows you to do is you special summon a level 4 or lower light monster from your hand in face-up attack position, which a lot of times you can, get your Seshte out and then special summon something else from the deck. In fact, this quick play spell is really helpful as well. I'm playing double Valkyrie's Embrace. Now what this one does is if all monsters you control are Valkyrie monsters, you target a face-up monster, you target attack position, Valkyrie monster you control, and 1 face-up monster your opponent controls. You change your monster to defense position, and if you do that, you banish that opponent's monster, which that's a really fair trade in my opinion. Change your monster to defense position and then banish your opponent's monster. That's a fair trade. Maybe not your opponent. And then you can't special monsters the rest of the turn except Valkyrie. So it locks you into Valkyrie, so keep that in mind in case you're thinking about doing some extra deck shenanigans. Also running a 1-for-1 Goddess Urd's Verdict. This is the continuous one spell I was talking about. What it does is your opponent cannot target Valkyrie monsters you control card effects, and they cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects. So it does provide protection, which is really nice. And then once per turn, you can declare a card name, then target 1 set card your opponent controls, reveal the set card, and if it was the declared card, banish it. Otherwise, banish 1 card you control. And then lastly, I'm running one, the Sanctuary in the Sky. This is kind of just a tech card for this deck. It's a field spell, and what it does is the battle damage to the battle damage to the controller of a fairy type monster from a battle involving that fairy monster becomes 0. So you basically don't really have to worry about battle damage from your little baby Valkyrie monsters on the field. It's kind of want to run this. It's just kind of a peace of mind card. If you don't want to run it, that's fine. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, running Trishula, the Dragon of Icy Imprisonment, and then also True King. If you don't want to run these two, that's fine. You don't have to, but you are able to go into this in the deck, so it does help. Running a number 90 Galaxy Eyes Photon Lord for a monster negate in case you want to go into a level 80 seed, and then also Lancelot. He's direct attack and he's Omnigate. Running one Relinquished Anima, one Condemned Dark Lord. This actually works really well in this deck because it's just 2 fairy monsters, and you can tribute summon fairy monsters. You can tribute summon fairy monsters that require 2 tributes by banishing 2 monsters from your graveyard instead of tributing, and it's still treated as a tribute summon. So it actually is not really just restricted to Dark Lords. It's actually really helpful in this deck. It kind of helps you go into TFD if you want to do that as well. Running a Herald of Mirage Lights. And then for the rest of the Link 2s, running an IP Masquerena, a Nightmare Cerberus, and a Nightmare Phoenix, as well as a Nightmare Unicorn. And then for the Link 4s, running the best fairy of them all, an Apollosa, a Borosaur Dragon, a Meta Knight Crusader Abramac, and then lastly, an access code. If you don't have an access code, you're gonna maybe like Borreload or something like that. But yeah, I mean, you don't have to have this card to run it in a Valkyrie deck. Is definitely not essential. But yeah, guys, that's actually it for the deck profile. You actually could even run Pot of Extravagance in this deck if you really wanted to, because this deck does not at all rely on the extra deck whatsoever. There's no designated Valkyrie stuff for the extra deck, so kind of just whatever you want to throw in there. It's really flexible. But yeah, thanks for watching. If you haven't already done so, now's a great time to subscribe, and then right after you've done that, you can hit the bell so you become a part of the notification team. And after you've done all of that, give this video a thumbs up. It shows that you like this content, you like this video, and it also allows my stuff to circulate around YouTube, which is very critical for a small YouTuber like me. I really appreciate you watching, guys, and as always, I'll see y'all in the next video.